Hello and welcome to the Morning Skate Podcast. I am Matt Moody, joined by DJ Mitchell to cover the Tuesday, November 13th NHL Daily Fantasy Slate. DJ, how you doing? How was your Monday? And how was your weekend?
Weekend was good because I spent it with you, Moods. Um,
Oh,
we
what a
did some
guy.
we did some drinks. I won $400 in college football DFS because it's the best sport on the planet. Um, yeah. Now by today I had off because I work for a bank and banks don't ever work. So yeah, now I'm in Buffalo, the greatest city in America, as everyone knows it as is called. How about
That
you?
that is what they say. Yeah, I mean, I'll second what you say. Good weekend, chilling, gambling a lot. I won money on a soccer bet, and I bet that a goal would not be scored in Croatia in 30 minutes. There was some Croatian league, and I placed a bet because New Jersey's fun like that, and I won. So yeah, I can say that I'm officially a soccer gambler, better expert now. So really, pretty much the only positive to take away from the weekend, honestly, because I got smashed everywhere else, but it was the most fun. So, um, yeah, uh, Monday we'll see. And yeah, that's about it. I'm sweating out a Matt Breida versus George Kittle for my fantasy league. I'm 0-9 in a fantasy league, and yeah, this is my first win, but it doesn't look good right now, despite 2 touchdowns for Breida because Kittle's at 8 receptions because he's good. But all right, back to the hockeys.
To the slate.
All right, we've got 9 games on Tuesday. We have Pittsburgh at New Jersey, Vancouver on a New York City back-to-back at the Islanders, Florida at Philadelphia, Tampa at Buffalo, Arizona at Detroit, Washington, Minnesota, Montreal at Edmonton, Toronto at LA, and Nashville on a road back-to-back at San Jose. So, DJ, any of these spots jump out to you right off the top?
I honestly, we were talking about it a little bit before. I kind of like Edmonton against Montreal. I mean, we're not confirmed on this yet, but McDavid with Draisaitl could be back in action. Draisaitl at 5,400. I think if that is gonna hold, that's a pretty good value spot for him. So I like looked at that right away. I also really like the Toronto side. I think getting a little bit of Tavares isn't crazy. LA is either gonna have Budai or Cal Peterson in that. Both of them are not good. Well, I mean, I'm not going to say they're not good. Cal Peterson, to be his first NHL start. Budai, though, on the other hand, not really too into him. I think LA overall is just not that good, so I might look to Toronto. Um, those were kind of the two starting that I had. What about you?
Yeah, I mean, just from a pure hockey perspective, I'm really excited to see this Nashville San Jose game. Two of the top teams in the NHL. Obviously, Nashville not really having played having played on Monday night. It's a little bit disappointing because they're not at quite full strength, especially without Victor Arvidsson as well. But it still should be a fun one. And if you're playing the night slate, it could be some fun to be had with the Nashville San Jose game, just because those two teams are very very talented. Um, but yeah, so all these games are actually a 6 over under. This or except for the Washington Minnesota game and the 2 late games. So all the others are currently a 6 per the Vegas Insider consensus odds. So should be pretty standard slate. I don't really see anything that's overly chalky. So I'm looking forward to get diving on into this one. Let's start at center. Headlined by, you mentioned, Connor McDavid. It appears, based on their loss last game, they will be at least testing out to start. McDavid with Draisaitl kind of back paired together at 5-on-5. Confirm this in morning skate, but should that be the case, obviously Draisaitl, even if his price mid fives, he's still a supreme value based on that. So that's a nice little way to kind of start off 1-2 at center, and then just play a bunch of wings that you like. But obviously confirm that in morning skate. Kajula was actually the third guy on that line in the third period last night. Just see who that third guy is, especially if it's a guy like Ty Ratty, who's been on the first power play for the last 3 games now. I don't see a problem playing him. You know, it's tough because Ratty's not going to see a ton of minutes, especially relative to his price. But any guy playing with McDavid, him or Kajula a little bit less so because of the lack of power play one time, but or if it's RNH, but I don't think they'll load up the first time like that. But I think that's a nice spot for McDavid. So are you paying up for McDavid here, or are you maybe trying to go with one of these other centers? I think we can both agree Elias Pettersson is absolutely not in play at 7,700.
No.
However, there's some other names up here. So any of those interest you?
I mean, yeah, like I said, I like Tavares, I like McDavid. I think they're up kind of obvious though. Pedersen, yeah, just way too expensive. Those are definitely my top two. I think Malkin also is right there. I mean, his price is finally really dipping. His minutes have been kind of weird, but I don't mind him back in the spot against New Jersey. So I'd say I'd start there. Um, I wouldn't be opposed to going a little bit against Buffalo with either Stamkos or Point, probably Stamkos over Point. But yeah, I think I'm starting with McDavid and Draisaitl if that's going to be the pairing. So yeah.
Yeah, so you mentioned the Pittsburgh guys. So they ran in practice today. They ran noteworthy. They ran the first power play as you would expect: Letang, Crosby, Malkin, Kessel, Hornqvist. And at 5-on-5, they practiced Crosby centering Simone and Rust. Actually, I don't know if it's Simon or Simone, but Simone sounds cooler. So that's the first line, and the second line is Hagelin, Malkin, and Patrick Hornqvist. I think that's been the case, for a few games now. But noteworthy that Phil Kessel is on the third line. So if you're looking for like a first power play line 5-on-5 stack, your option is Malkin and Hornqvist. Obviously, any of these names could go off on any night, but that's the probably where the math would lead you to go, just based on their exposure to one another. So if you're looking to play Malkin or Crosby, there's that. I think down here, the name that interests me the most is actually Eichel. Um, I think that it's a relatively, I think it's a good situation for any player of like Eichel's like caliber when they're expected to be losing. You just see it so many times that like when a team's losing, you're more likely to kind of like just get the puck on net regardless. And a guy like Eichel, if the puck on his stick so much, he has the shot upside that matches just about any guy on the slate. And I think for 7,100, he's definitely going to be a guy that I target in tournaments, playing within his new first line of Jeff Skinner and then Sam Reinhart. So obviously, Buffalo fans here. So, take that with a grain of salt. But I just think they're both super, or that first line is just super talented. We saw what that did to Jason Pominville's price. He's all the way at 5,700, despite not even playing first power play for the last few games. So you're getting a bit of value there based on the news. And Skinner, I think he's second in the NHL in goal scoring. So
yeah, he's right up there.
It's a good time for that first line, and I like both sides of the game personally.
Me too. I think it's kind of crazy. I just like glanced over at the goaltending. Vasilevsky on the road in Buffalo is the most expensive goalie on the slate, and like I understand, like he's a good goalie. Tampa Bay probably beats Buffalo, but Carter Hutton at $7,000 at home. I mean that's got to be, being as Buffalo is currently in a playoff spot. That's kind of crazy. I mean, I'm not going to probably play Hutton or Vasilevsky, but wow, they really, really think Tampa Bay is going to beat up on Buffalo, which is fair. Moving down the list a little bit, I think that you kind of get to this Barkov range at 6'3". I think in that range, he's clearly the best. But is there anyone else in this kind of range? I mean, Pavelski maybe going as back-to-back Nashville team. Is there anyone in this range that you really like, kind of a little bit lower?
I'm not sure that I love Barkov. I'm not going to call it the Barkov range just because I don't think he's like a guy that I'll target down here. You just mentioned Pavelski, right?
Yeah.
I think he's a guy that I'm like pretty interested in. He's just so consistent on a night-to-night basis that matchup obviously dinks him a little bit, but the power play role is secure. He just feels like a guy who should be like 6,000 to 6,500 based on the team he plays on, the minutes he plays, and his general shot, offensive upside. So I think he's okay. Noteworthy for Washington is that as of last game, Nick Backstrom is centering Ovechkin and TJ Oshie. So if that reverts back to Kuznetsov centering Ovechkin, Kuznetsov stands out here at only 5,900. It seems like DraftKings took note of that news and the fact he only played 16 minutes last game and dropped him all the way down to below 6K. So I like that little bit of price savings should the news revert back to Kuznetsov's favor. But 5,800 for a guy like Nick Backstrom, who has a less of a shot floor than Kuznetsov, is certainly GPP only.
Yes.
Two names that I am kicking around just because I really like them as players are Galchenyuk, who we mentioned, I think, last week, and Logan Couture. Couture is, I think, he's day-to-day, and I think he's likely to play. We haven't seen anything confirming his absence, but he's only 5,500, and that really does stand out to me. I mentioned with Pavelski it's a tough matchup, but Couture's been a guy who's I mentioned Pavelski being a 6,500 player. That is Logan Couture. He's been 7K. He's all the way down at 5,600. So I think all this contingent on Draisaitl not being on McDavid's line. There are some fallback options. But pretty clearly, if Draisaitl's there, he's the top option. So finish off this mid tier at center for me. You got anything else?
Not at the upper mid tier. I think obviously getting down any lower than that, we already mentioned Draisaitl. I think that's really going to be obvious. Probably going to be really highly owned in cash. But GPP, kind of looking outside of the box, I think Kadri could be a decent play as well if you want to go away from Tavares. He's in a pretty good spot. I just like Nazem Kadri. I think that he's shown in the past he's got some good DFS upside. They did change around their power play units. He would have been on the first though, right?
Yeah, only the first. Yeah, the first unit's
the first
good.
Unit's going to stay the same. So yeah. The second unit got some changes. Hyman basically being off of it, and Kapanen being on it. So I like Kadri. He kind of feels like a solo play. Do you like him at all with Marleau?
I really do. I like Marleau a decent amount. So interestingly, I'm just looking at it's only 15 minutes, so take this with a grain of salt. But after Matthews went down with injury, they had this first power play together pretty much that entire time. So 36 shots on goal. So, not the most insignificant sample. Interestingly, Tavares takes 40% of that unit's shots, and then the rest are spread pretty much equally with Kadri, Marleau, Marner, and Riley all at 15% of pick up the rest of those shots. So, if you can't get to Tavares, obviously he's the trigger guy, but all four of the other guys are shooting the puck just about the same amount. And with Marleau at only 4,300, that really does stand out to me. He's not the highest floor player. He's not the highest ceiling player, but I think his median projection for 4,300 is just, it's good enough. And especially, stacking Kadri, Marleau, there is some upside there. Especially because you would expect Kopitar to be matched up pretty, and Doughty to be matched up against Tavares for the majority of the night. So
yes,
I think that's a pretty sharp GPP pivot if you are looking to make it.
Yeah, and then just a couple notes in this range. Travis Zajac did play with Hall and Palmieri last game. He probably will again. We don't know about Hischier. I thought he was pretty much confirmed out, and now it kind of sounds like they're being really hush-hush about it. So we'll see. Yep. And then getting any lower.
It is worth noting on Zajac and Hischier that even before Hischier got hurt against Winnipeg, they did start with Zajac centering that line. So unless they change things back up again because they changed lines and got smoked by Winnipeg, I think Zajac will be there. But that price I think just keeps him pretty not really on my radar.
Yeah, no, I think it's fair. I think getting down a little bit more. One name that might jump out to a lot of people, Evan Rodriguez. Last game he had 19 minutes, but that was in large part due to Eichel being sick and missing some of the game. So Evan Rodriguez at 3.7, he's still got to score a goal. His shot metrics are pretty good, but I think in this range he's not a bad option. He's definitely seeming to get a pretty consistent 15 to 16 minutes, power play 2. So anyone else kind of cheaper that you like?
Yeah, I think if, I'm left in this range, I'm probably going to try to get up to Nolan Patrick at 4,500. Again, first power play, second line. He's just got a pretty decent floor, I think, for Philly, and he gives you exposure to that first power play. But, he's getting up to the point where I think he's going to be a little bit out of play soon if he hits like 5 to 5.5K. But for right now, I think he's a fine play. Other than that, there's really not much that
Yeah,
I'm all that interested in down at this, super cheap center range.
yeah, I
Like,
agree.
yeah.
I mean, like I'm trying to go through the list a little bit more. I see a lot of names that hopefully end up getting called up to the NHL and maybe can make a push, but no one that's giving
Yeah.
me any reason to bring them up. So why don't we move over to winger, where we have Ovechkin, Kucherov, Giroux, Dadonov, Forsberg, and of course Jeff Skinner at the top. Is there anyone that you're keying in on?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think Claude Giroux is now fairly priced, so that's a little bit, not disappointing because he's certainly deserving of the 72 price tag, but it's a pretty sharp change from the past, few weeks where he's been low to mid, or probably high fives to low sixes in price. So I'm probably not buying while he's at this, this expensive. But his minutes, you can't argue the profile, his minutes, the power play role, all of it. Um, I honestly think that my favorite play up here is going to be Ovi, though. I mean, it's not that hot of a take, but I think that over Kucherov, I'm making the room for Ovi. Um, and I think that's just because Tampa's shown the ability to roll, all their lines out. Like they're just such a good team up and down the lineup that they don't really rely on that first line as much as Washington does. So I think if I'm like spending up at wing, I'm going Ovechkin and cash, but uh, I could be talked off of it pretty easily, personally.
That's fair. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if any of these players are like screaming out to me as like must plays. Um, I'm pretty okay with looking a little bit lower. I do think like if I had to gun to my head pick one of the top guys in the top five, I honestly think Kucherov might be the guy for me. But his numbers don't really prove that as much as it's kind of like a gut feeling. So I'd have to look into it more. Other than
Yeah,
that,
so I guess you mentioned the numbers might not be there for him on the season. Actually, I guess on the season it is noteworthy that Ovi does not lead the league in Corsi per 60 or I Corsi per 60. That actually goes to I'm at the last 10 games, but David Pastrnak leads the league currently, which is pretty cool. Obviously, he's not on the slate, but Ovechkin is right up there in second. You have to go pretty far down the list at this point to find Kucherov. He's simply not shooting the puck as much as he was. I was hoping it would be, a small sample thing and that he would get back to it essentially, but he hasn't. It's been 15 to 18 games now for all these guys, and Stamkos has a better shot floor than he does to this point, and he's down at 81st in the NHL behind noted snipers Kyle Okposo.
hmm,
Uh, you know, like some of these names here, you just look and go, man, like Kucherov isn't shooting as much as those guys.
yeah,
And it's been 18 games, so I have a
we'll
little
see
bit
what
of trouble.
happens.
Yeah, but all right, that's splitting hairs honestly because each of these guys has 3 point
Hmm.
upside, 4 point upside, even with slate breaking potential. Um, So a bit cheaper, 6,700. Mike Hoffman. Just I'm not playing him. He's not on that first power play. So despite playing with Barkov and Dadonov at 5-on-5, you're missing out on such a key component of that Florida offense being their lethal first power play unit that I don't really think it makes sense to pay this price for him. So in this next tier at wing, does anyone else stand out to you, like basically below Hoffman?
I mean, I think Taylor Hall is probably going to go underutilized, even though he's going against Pittsburgh. I'm not that worried about that. I mean, New Jersey's been kind of a mess, but Taylor Hall has proven to be pretty much matchup proof. So I think him getting the amount of minutes he is and his skill, I still think he's fine as like a GPP only play. A little bit more down the list. That's going way down the list. Is there anyone? you have anyone up right around here? I mean, like, it's right in this range because my next guys are like way down.
Um, yeah, I think a guy like Brendan Gallagher is interesting. He's been a monster this season. Shot wise, and his line has been super productive. So if you are like on the side of Edmonton sucks and I'm not playing them, taking a guy like Gallagher for the discounted shot floor you're getting, I think is an okay play. Other than that, Mitch Marner 6,300 I think
Yeah.
is the other standout play here. And I think that might come as a bit of a surprise because you don't think of him as like the playmaker, or you think of him as a playmaker, but he's actually like a really productive shooter. 35 shots in his last 10 games. Looking at his game logs, he's at least 3 shots in his last 5. And he's playing with Tavares at 5-on-5. So I think you're getting him a little bit cheaper than he should be. But
Yeah.
again, I'm finding the money for Ov if I spend up at wing and then figuring the rest out from there, I think.
Okay, that's fair. I think getting a little bit cheaper. I honestly really like Evander Kane. Now he's back down at 5'6". I mean, he's been seeing consistent 19, 20 minutes. His shots on goal have definitely been there. Obviously, the big concern is like, well, he's not in the first power play, but honestly, that second power play unit is seeing good minutes. And Evander Kane in the last game was right up there with seeing the most total minutes of power play time. Like they aren't running 2 units that are just completely defined. They're definitely keeping Kane out there to be a shot guy. He had a goal and an assist in the last game. He's with Pavelski. So he pairs up with him, and you just kind of hope that maybe they get some power play looks together, which they did last game. So I really like Evander Kane a lot. Nashville's a team that not a lot of people like to target against, and I do understand that. But on a back-to-back, that might change it a little bit, and that might just bring his ownership down. Another guy in this range, Patrick Hornqvist, playing alongside Malkin and Hagelin. He's 5K. He's still in the first power play, unless if something changed that I don't remember. He has 8 shots on goal in the past 2 games. He did not see a lot of minutes last game, which I don't really know what happened there. But that's not going to scare me up. At 5K, I think he's a pretty good value.
Yeah. The minutes, I think, just came from the fact that it was 4-0 pretty early on. So I'm not that concerned. I don't think he'll ever be a guy that plays 20 minutes in a game, but I think 16 to 17 for 5K first power play playing with Malkin at 5-on-5 is, definitely a good cash play. No complaints there. I guess.
Anyone else want to pitch in?
Yeah, Jason Zucker, 5,500 is just such a good hockey player, and I'm a bit confused why his minutes are, slightly down, but he's gonna be pretty much first power play. Where Minnesota's gonna go. They're gonna go with Suter and Dumba for just about half the game, and then their power play is looking like basically the same as last year, where they just play a line with 2 guys at the point. It's a little bit dull, but I think that Minnesota has at least sneaky upside, and I think Zucker, especially for cash games, is just super safe. So
yeah,
I like that price at only 55.
And then Hurdle's back, right? Was he out? He was out that last game though.
He's back.
Yeah. Okay. I knew he was back. He wasn't even out that long. Okay, that's probably not that noteworthy. Okay. Yeah, what about a guy like?
He's good, especially for chair plays. Hurdle's fine, for sure.
What do you think? What are your thoughts? What are your thanks? Jesus. Clayton Keller, 5K going against the great Detroit Red Wings in Detroit.
I actually was looking at Arizona's lines against Washington, where they won 4-1 pretty convincingly. And what stood out to me is that Keller was on the first line of Stepan and Brendan Perlini. So I was going to get to Brendan Perlini at 3,200 at the wing position as like a really solid cash play. But all 3 of those guys are together on the first power play as well. So I really do like them for a stack in tournaments. And also I think Keller's an okay cash play. I'm not setting aside a roster spot for him just because, I think he's a really good player, but I don't know if, I'm like necessarily going to play him over like a Hornqvist or even like a Reinhart, just because I don't think that he's like a game breaking talent the way that, Malkin or Eichel. is, and obviously Stepan and Perlini aren't that. So
Yeah, that's fair.
he's a great play. Right here. Also, Konechny, first line, first power play. You can't really go
Yeah.
wrong at 5K.
Yeah, there's a lot of good options there. I think a little bit cheaper, two guys we already mentioned, but Drake Caggiula, if he's with McDavid at 4-3, is definitely a guy to consider. He probably won't see much in the lineup power play time, but I mean, at 4-3, if you're playing with McDavid, I got to consider it. And then Marlowe, we already mentioned. So I think
Yep.
those guys are definitely to be considered. And then getting cheaper, I think, you already mentioned the main guy there, Perlini. I like that a lot. I think Fiala could get a bit of a bump with Arvidsson going down and being on the IR. He hasn't really shown it this year either, shots on goal wise, but someone's gonna have to pick it up for Nashville. I'm excited to see what he can do tonight. Is there anyone else that we're missing at 4? I mean, like Tyler Toffoli at 3-5 is just kind of crazy to me, but
Yeah. So I think someone that's going to get a bit of buzz is Colton Sissons.
Yeah, I literally looked at the name. I was like, I completely forgot about that.
Yeah, because he's the guy with Arvidsson going down that's taking over with Johansson and Forsberg. So the reason that I prefer Perlini pretty substantially to Sissons is that over his past 3 seasons, Sissons has basically been like a 8 to 10 shots per 60 or Corsi per 60 type player. For reference, like that's pretty much in the Matthew Barzal, Mikko Rantanen range of like, they're good offensive players, but they're simply just not going to shoot the puck a lot. And, that definitely lowers their floor. Whereas Perlini, for like the past 3 seasons, has been in the 16 to 18 range, which is it's elite. I mean, it's I would say borderline elite, but it's in the great range. I kind of think is above 18 as an elite shooter. 16 to 18 is great, and then like the 13 to 16 range is being like a good, catch play sort of DFS option. And Perlini is on the upper end of that. The minutes are certainly going to be there for him, and I like the matchup better against Detroit. So I think there's kind of a 3-pronged answer to why I prefer Perlini for cheap. But Sissons, isn't a bad play as long as he sticks there through the entirety of Monday night's game.
All right. Yeah, I think that. Oh, sorry. Anything else?
No, I was just going to concur with Toffoli too. It's a bet on talent type play against a Toronto team that we know isn't great defensively. So
yeah, and then I guess the last name I'll just mention, Andreas Janssen is on the second power play for Toronto. He's seen like 15 minutes, and like I think he's pretty skilled at 3K. So that would be kind of like if you somehow couldn't get up to Perlini 200 more, like it just didn't happen. He'd be the guy I could live with, but like find the 200, just find a way. Okay, so why don't we get to defense now? Anyone at the top of the list here that you want to mention right off the bat?
Burns.
That's probably the guy. Yeah,
he's the guy.
He's still good at hockey.
He is. Oh, that's a shame. Last night he only had 1 point on Sunday. Don't care. He's still the guy. It's not really that close of a question, honestly, until he's, out of range of these top guys, just because I think that's what he is. He's the top guy. So, I'm not going to really harp on it too much. In terms of tournaments, is there a bad play up here? I would say maybe Roman Josi is like a not great play, but, just the other day he had a 10 shot on goal game against Boston. So, do what you want up here, but I think Burns is the cash option. He always will be the cash option, and he's the most likely guy to hit his salary expectation without a multi-point game. If Burns gets 1 assist, 7 shots on goal, and 3 blocks, that's a smash night. And it doesn't mean that San Jose has to score 5 goals for him to get there, sort of thing. So I just think it's Burns. Are you leaning towards anyone else? I guess on the season, if you sort it by fantasy points per game, Riley and Carlson have both been better. So is that where you're leaning, or are you kind of with me just riding Burns till, I guess he gets hurt or something, because it doesn't seem like he's going to be priced in the 7K range like he was last year.
Yeah, no, I'm all about that Burns. I'm all about that Burns. It's really that's just happening. I'm throwing that in there. I think you could definitely afford him. We found so much value already. Like just Burns, yes. Burns, Pavelski, Kane. I really like that stack a lot. I think it's going to get overlooked. So you can definitely lock me in on that. Getting in this range in general, like I don't think you're going to be able to afford Burns and another one of these top tier guys. But like, as you mentioned, like you couldn't really go wrong. So I think if you can do it, but then again, like you're not going to solo Carlson probably. I mean, maybe you could, but you probably wouldn't. You're not going to
Yeah,
solo
that's
Yandel. So if you're playing all those guys with them, there's no way you're going to get Yandel with all of his line, the top guys, and Burn. Like, so that's kind of why I think like you're probably only going to end up with one.
yep.
And then down the list, I love OEL 5-4. Still love him here. He's kind of really finding his groove. I knew it eventually happened. So I'm still about him. Is there anyone I may have missed along the way that you wanted to mention?
Um, yeah, I mean, I think my philosophy at defense is about the same as it's always been. You know, all these guys I think above 6K are actually like great, you know, GPP pairings with their other guys or with their line or teammates. And if you can find the money for two of them in cash, go for it. But you know, I'm just looking at this like bottom of the range. You know, 5K. We have guys like Petrie, even Doughty against the Leafs. I mean, we love defense against the Leafs. Even if Doughty's not the best DFS prototype, he's going to see a ton of minutes, and he certainly could start shooting the puck on goal. Clefbaum's dumb cheap down here for his power play role with McDavid. Matt Dumba, 4,800. You know, we love taking guys against Washington too because you know they kind of are. You know, they're a bit weak defensively, and you know Minnesota's going to roll Dumba Suter out for a combined 55 minutes for 28 minutes each. They're going to be on the ice. It's some of the best value you can get around this range. So I think those guys are kind of like where I'm going to land in cash. Even Erik Karlsson is a cash worthy option if you really don't want to play Burns but want San Jose exposure. I think Karlsson's definitely fine for 4,900. Like he's gonna figure it out sooner than later. And you know, I don't really see a reason that the guys above 5.5, like around that range, are more expensive. Besides the fact that yeah, pucks have gone in the net when they've been on the ice, which is great, you know. But it's going to start going in the net for guys like Clefbaum and Dumba to some extent, even though kind of has been lately. Or I guess not the last few games for Dumba, but you know, just riding the price elevators up and down and up and down is kind of what I do. I always get in on the ground floor and get off at the top. So just another night of that here for me, I think.
All right, that's fair. So one name that I never thought I'd see this cheap is Erik Karlsson at 4,900.
Yeah.
That's just never thought that would see that. So that's a thing. Okay. Do you have any interest? One name that I kind of like wanted to at least mention, Ben Hutton. Now, I'd have to see what happens tonight. But against Buffalo, he saw some power play one time, or at least when they went 4-on-3 power play in overtime, Hutton was with Godolphin, Horvat, and Pedersen. So Ben Hutton at 4-4, if he is first power play.
Yeah, he wasn't. So I think that's not. Really
that game's already over, isn't it? Okay, so
yeah,
we know for a fact.
And Pouliot just
why would they want to?
That interesting because he's not much of a shooter. I mean, I just don't want Vancouver. You know, I'll be honest. If you really want Vancouver, you can play Pouliot at 4.3, but I don't. Actually, on the other side of that game, we got a little bit of news out of the Islanders. They took Matt Barzal off the first power play and replaced him. Basically, they replaced him with Ryan Pulock, which makes me think that Pulock will be, he might see a slight uptick in power play, like time on ice, but it does leave me with a bit of concern. You know, is Barzal still going to be the first power play guy? Like, you know, I think it's going to be that like Nelson, that grouping of Nelson, Ladd, or sorry, not Ladd, God, Lee, Bailey, Aberley, or actually. Let me rephrase that because Nelson's not on that first power play. It's going to be Letty's with them still. So it just makes me think that the Barzal unit will be still kind of the first power play. So I don't really expect a huge difference in like power play usage for Pulock, but 4,200, seeing a solid 23 to 24-ish minutes a night, you know, up sometimes, down sometimes. It's a pretty good floor plus upside play. But I think the noteworthy part of that is you know who to stack them with now, and it's that Lee. It's the Lee Bailey Nelson line, just because that's the first line. At least two of those guys will be on the power play with them, so just a little bit different look for Pollock. But I think he's in play if you go in this cheap at defense.
All right, that's fair. Is there anyone else worth mentioning that's like, I don't know, there's really no one that's jumping off the page to me as like a guy that I really feel like I need to mention right now? Am I missing anyone else? I'm pretty much.
Yeah, I'm scrolling. I don't really think there's any like dependency news that would factor into any of this. So
there's names that I like look at and I'm like, oh, I like Marc-Andre Vlasic, but he hasn't shot the puck lately. So I don't know, at 3,400, it's like, oh, he's really cheap there, but I don't know.
Right.
I could more get behind a guy like Jake Muzzin because he blocks shots a lot, and Toronto is going to shoot a lot. And if Muzzin can block 5 shots and have an assist, like that's hitting value for sure. Okay.
Yeah.
Now I feel like I mentioned someone, so I feel good. Okay. Why don't?
All right. One more name is Dmitry Orlov. They actually switched Orlov off of the Niskanen pairing, and now Orlov is paired with John Carlson at 5-on-5. I don't know if that'll stick. I don't know if that's better or worse for DFS, but it's certainly, for me, I think it's a bit of an upgrade offensively. And I mean, even defensively, you kind of want there to be more shots while he's on the ice because he can step in front of some of them. And for 3,300, he's going to play 24 to 25 minutes, especially if they're trailing. I think 3,300 for Orlov is a fine way to punt defense. But
right.
Yeah, I think that's the lowest I'll go.
All right. How low will he go? All right. Well, goalies exist, and you're going to have to play one, so good luck. Now, to guarantee goals.
Yeah, that's goalie for you. I guess noteworthy is for LA. We saw Jack Campbell get called up to the NHL, but also Peter Budaj. So those two are like the goalies for LA right now.
No, but you being Cal Peterson got called up. Jack Campbell went to IR. Right. Yeah, no, I mentioned that at the top of the show, right?
Yeah, and they're both 6,700, which is like stupid cheap. So
yeah.
Like they're not that big of underdogs. So if you're taking a shot in the dark, it's fine. Like
Budaj will start. I'm seeing right now. Peter Budaj will start at 67. Yeah, like I mean, you are really like if LA wins, which I don't think is completely unrealistic. Yeah, that's going to be big because Budaj will see a good number of shots. I don't hate that call. Yeah. I mean, what about like Carter? I mean, is Carter Hutton just as good of a play then?
I'm a little bit more terrified of the Tampa depth than I am the Toronto depth players, because obviously you're banking on the first power play, kind of failing, and that's any goalie realistically. And I think that Tampa can come at you in waves of guys. Obviously Toronto has a bunch of talent too, but their numbers have been slightly down since Matthews is out. As you would expect. So I just think, and I think LA is a little bit, of Kopitar and Doughty, they're just a bit more structured, I think, defensively, despite their struggles to begin the year. That it makes me feel better about a guy like Budaj. But both of them I think are just in play because they're so cheap and not that big of home underdog kind of thing. But I thought that was a noteworthy price that stood out to me.
All right. Well, why don't we get to our stacks? I'll start off with one I don't believe you'll have. McDavid with Draisaitl and Klefbom. I like it a ton. I'm not sure about Klefbom exactly. I think it's doable to get him and still get Burns. But if I have to sacrifice anyone, I'd sacrifice Klefbom out of that. Get Burns.
Sacrifice him at the stake.
Yes. And I don't mind going a little bit cheaper on defense with a guy like maybe Pulock. So really just the Draisaitl McDavid is probably locked in for at least one of my GPP builds.
All right. For tournaments, why did I think we're doing guaranteed goals for tournaments? I really like this Minnesota first line of it's now Stahl, Zucker, and Michael Granlund. So, I mean, they're each I think 5,700. Zucker's 55, and the other two are 57. So they're just really good values. They're gonna play 18, 19 minutes. You can tack on Dumba for an exposure play, and I think that's just a really good mid-tier stack that's
Right.
not going to break the bank, lets you fit in some nice players around them, and has great upside. So, what's your
I'll
next
let.
one?
No, I mean, I could go either way here, and I feel like I really want to make sure we double mention one of them. So I'll just, yeah. Do you know which cheaper stack you want to go with, or no?
Um, I mean, I'm thinking you're going to take it, so go ahead.
All right, I'll take the Toronto Kadri Marlowe stack, and like I think like Morgan Riley would be the one to pair with them, but I probably won't do that because I'll probably play Burns. So those two, and the third line mate Kapanen, probably not. I'd almost rather try to get up to Marner with them, even though it's not directly correlated, or Tavares, and hope that power play does go off. Either way, I think you can do it. But I'm probably going to go McDavid and not Tavares. So you see what I'm getting at. So then I'll let you take the one I think you're going to take.
Yeah, it's the Arizona cheap
Yeah.
one with Stepan, Keller, and Perlini. I'm not gonna go all in on Arizona or anything, just about ever. But I might lock in Brendan Perlini because of his, really nice shot floor. The minutes he's been playing and the first line, first power play role. So assuming none of that gets like confirmed, switched up, I think that that's a really, just it's too cheap for the matchup, for the minutes, and for the talent of, a guy like Keller, and then Stepan's been a pretty good shooter as well. So
All right. Well, then, guaranteed goals. I know one that I'm definitely going to take. So I'm going to start with Evander Kane at 5'6". I like him a ton. I'm not really sure your feelings on him. Did you ever really say exactly how you feel about Evander Kane tomorrow?
um, I mean, he's okay. I just, the power play thing is a bit concerning to me. But he's eighth in the NHL in iCore Super 60 right now, so obviously I like him.
Mm,
Um, so I
all
just
right.
don't know that in cash games I'll play him and Burns, and I think Pavelski's pretty close to consideration for me. There's guys there, Pavelski, Couture, Hurdle, that I think I like a little bit more than Kane personally, but that's splitting hairs for
Yeah,
the
I'm
most
okay.
part.
Yeah, if you said like I'm taking Pavelski over Kane, I wouldn't be mad about it. That's fair. Okay. Who do you got?
I'm gonna take Brendan Gallagher at 6K.
Interesting. I'm okay with that. All right,
Same. Honestly,
then.
to
I'm
me,
sorry.
he's the same play as Evander Kane. Not playing a team on a back-to-back, but he's also not playing a team that's a little bit tired, and he's not at home, but he's on the road. But everything else pretty much lines up, except for the fact that he's on the first power play, and I like that a lot against an Edmonton team that things can get ugly pretty quickly. And Montreal's been scoring, so just kind of hope that he steps into a shot or tips one in or does whatever Brendan Gallagher does because I like his price here.
All right, that's fair. I'm gonna go with my second guy as Patrick Hornqvist, playing with Malkin, playing him at first power play. That's just, I mean, and New Jersey's goaltending's been so bad lately, and they just can't seem to get out of their own way. So I'm gonna go with Kane Hornqvist.
Yeah, I mean this range is certainly a good range for us to have left ourselves with about 5K at the wing position. I might go a little bit off the board and ride a hot hand that we've seen in Anthony Mantha. He's playing at 5-on-5 with Larkin, which I just think is, and on the power play too with Larkin. And he's on the top line. He's finally seeing top line minutes. Like he's averaging 16 minutes per game on the season, but his last 3-4 games, he's at 18 minutes in each of them. So I think we're getting him at the right time. We talked about how Detroit's a decent matchup for Arizona. I think Detroit at home against Arizona shouldn't have that much of a hard time. I like them just as much as any other team on the slate, I think. And so for that price and for a guy with Mantha's talent, shot floor, whatever, I think that that's sneaky GPP one-off play that I'm likely to make in at least one situation.
All right. Well, then I guess that pretty much wraps it up here. Uh, I'm still figuring out the shirts. I should probably I'm thinking Friday I'll probably meet with those guys, so I'll try to get something from them to know what's good for the Thursday show, barring I'm on it, which I should be.
Yeah, hopefully we have you back for the next little while, as I'm sure people liked having me talk to someone else rather than ramble on about
Yeah,
nonsense. I mean, I did so anyways today, but at least there's a different voice in there to mix
it's
things up and to
it's so
laugh at
much
me.
easier when I'm just home, but I've legitimately been home for I think 18 hours of the past 2 weeks. And I just, yeah, I'm finally going to be home after this week. But being in the hotel, it works, but it's harder because like there's stuff to do because it's Buffalo, the greatest city in America. So, all right. Anything else? I don't know. The shirts, yeah. Like I'm thinking by the end of this week, they should be up online to buy, and then like they
That's
won't
awesome.
ship. They'll be like online. You can buy them, and then like it'll be like a 3 week until it arrives type of thing. The holiday, yeah, right around the holidays.
Yeah, certainly keep that on your radars if you're interested. It would be great to support us. These shirts weren't free, so it'd be cool if you guys like the show and want a little something for the winter time. They're long sleeves. I think you mentioned that. So,
Mhm.
and you can check out what we have an Instagram now. DJ, did you talk about all this? I was watching the Columbus and Dallas game, to be
No, I never
honest.
really mentioned the Instagram. Yeah, it's at Morning Skate Pod, as is everything on the gram. I've been posting at least like pictures of the shirts. I try to remember to post all the podcasts.
Yep.
We're up to 40 followers. Heads up, everybody, getting big. So be careful out there. All right.
Yeah, and just an update on like the other offerings of the Morski podcast. We're still working on the sim. Like I know Doug talks to Steven just about every day. Like obviously Steven's a busy guy, has stuff of his own to worry about, but those two are making a lot of progress into the sim, getting it updated. Basically, we had to re-update it in general because it was glitching out, but also because of the Fantasy Lab stuff that happened. So apologies for not having that available currently. But when we get it up and going again, we have a lot of cool stuff planned for it. One being, posts on Instagram, kind of looking at, what the sim's saying and how to kind of read it, and like things that are based on the sim, like line stacks, a bunch of different things that I'm sort of planning out, and then also live streams is something that we are looking to do from time to time. Can't promise, every day we do a live stream or something, but definitely like for NBA All Star break, bigger weekend slates, like that sort of thing, is certainly going to be something that we'll try to, broaden the offerings that we can provide because one, they're a ton of fun, and two, I think that there's a market for them. So if you're excited about things like that, just be sure to follow us on Twitter at MoneySkatePod. Follow me personally at Fake Moods and DJ's at DJ_Mitchell94. DJ, anything else to say before we close out?
Nope.
Cool. So with all that said, I said all the social media stuff. So, do that again, rewind if you missed it because you should be following us. You should be following me, etc. So with all that said, thank you for listening. From Doug, from DJ, and from myself, have a good slate, everybody, and we